Good afternoon and welcome to today's IWCE Urgent Communications webinar, How Critical Infrastructure Enterprises are Making the Migration to IP Solutions. I'm Donnie Jackson, editor of IWCE's Urgent Communications. Today's webinar is being sponsored by our good friends at Avtec. I would like to remind you that if you have any technical difficulties, please press the Help button on your player console to receive assistance in solving common issues. For audio or slide advancement problems, try hitting the F5 key on your keyboard to refresh your webinar console. Use the Command and R keys if you are on an Apple computer. You will notice a toolbar at the bottom of your console. These widgets allow you to open and close widgets on your screen. For example, if you need to adjust your volume, click on the Media Player widget. When you're done, click on it again to hide the Media Player window. Feel free to customize your webcast console. You can move windows around by dragging on the title bar or resize your window by clicking on the lower right corner of any window. We welcome your questions about today's topic. To submit a question, simply type it into the question window on the left-hand side of your console and hit the Submit button. We'll be answering as many of these questions as possible during the Q&A period, but you don't have to wait till we get there. Please feel free to send in your question at any time, and we'll try to incorporate some of them into our discussion before the question and answer and address everything else during the Q&A. Finally, please be aware that today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on IWCE's Urgent Communications website. You will be alerted by email once this archive has been posted. And now I'd like to introduce today's excellent panelists. Dave Wotton, Director of Network Operations Control, Automation and Support for Southwest Airlines. Thanks for joining us, Dave.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And also joining us today is Donovan Medina, IT Telecommunications Project Manager for Kansas City Southern Railways.
Thank you, Donnie. Hey, guys.
And Donovan, you're not actually in Kansas City?
That's correct, Donnie. I'm actually on this side of the border on Monterrey, Mexico. Let me just brief you really quick about our company. I currently work for Kansas City Southern Railways, which is headquartered in Kansas City, Missouri. It's a transportation holding company that has railroad investments in the U.S., Mexico, and Panama. So currently, yes, just as you mentioned, I'm dialing in from Monterrey, Mexico, chipping in my 2 cents with the Dispatch to Avtec Scout transition, hoping our audiences find, these tips or recommendations of best practices that we followed to the best convenience when they decide to go with this really beneficial document that you guys put together for us. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks a bunch. And so, Donovan, talk to us a little bit about what was it that caused you all to want to go to IP, and how did you execute it?
Well, Donnie, the world's changing every other year, and as far as technologically, that's how, most of the website bloggers state it, right? Every year we change computers, cell phones, but to me it seems like every other minute. Kansas City Southern really identified, has been a pioneer in investing technological as far as new devices, and I'm talking about consoles, security-wise, to offer their customers state-of-the-art services. So we've been a customer from Avtec, which it was their TDM platform, time-division-multiplexing dispatch. Currently, this is a very robust platform system that operates and works beautifully. You have no complaints. You never ever have any failures. If you have an issue, you just swap a board. I mean, it's old technology, but it's reliable. Unfortunately, things change, environments change. Our network has grown tremendously, so we all have to be oriented to that to an IP network, to have scalability in your network. So where our main concern was building DRs, disaster recovery systems, redundant systems, which we all had in place, but with the consoles, that's where we came to a roadblock, because we said, all right, in the event that we had to change from a certain location to a different point, what would be the strategy. So, it would be kind of funny picking up half a ton equipment and relocating to a different scenario. So this really gave us a lot of leverage to trigger a business case to say, all right, let's move from TDM into an IP world. Now, this wasn't an easy decision just because, it said, all right, what's the major cost? Mobility? Yes, that justifies what we want, but you have to have in mind that changing from one technology to another can be very harsh if it's not planned correctly, right? So this is basically what I want to talk to you about, a little bit of what we encountered, some of the challenges that we've encountered, and how we attended those to make the transition as smooth as possible.
Okay, all right. And so what did you all do?
So I put together real quick here a quick slide that shows basically when we made the cutover, what we experienced, and it's basically 6 categories. No PTT endpoint, no endpoint TX, SIP extensions, IP recorder, base error, and others. I know this is kind of very general, and some people that are not very familiarized with the terms or consoles may say, oh, what the hell is he talking about? But, that's okay. The reason I wanted to share this is because I know most of the people are familiar with voice over IP these days. Most of the companies, corporate companies, have different call managers. They have Avaya, Cisco, you name it, any brand. So our main concern was we had just deployed a Cisco call manager when probably 2 months prior to our Avtec cutover. So what we really wanted to do is have a baseline of the current behavior our TDM system had. So just going back a little bit, remember that TDM was really reliable. We really didn't have any trends of anomalies with that system. So our baseline was basically 0. So that's a good recommendation that you want to start with when you're making a transition. Have a baseline so you can always go back and say, especially when you're troubleshooting, you want to go back and say, all right, what's that variance? What's the problem? Where I can really identify and go back and say, okay, this is where we went wrong. So basically, you want to prepare a baseline prior to any movement that you want to do. That way you can record all the specifics. Now also, and this is Active's recommendation, is that you have a mature network. And what do you call a mature network is maybe not that you have a tail-based framework, but that you do at least have a proper protocol defined. Because I've seen, in various layouts in the opportunity that I had working for different projects, that a lot of VoIP and data networks are not properly mature. They have different routing protocols all over, different interfaces and whatnot. And I don't want to get too technical there, but that if you don't have a really solid network, or you understand exactly how your network is behaving, you can't come and deal with a lot of problems that, at the end you're going to say, hey, listen, it's not me, or it's not my network, it's the application itself. So, that's one of the considerations that you want to have. You really want to have nailed down how your network is actually behaving prior to making this transition. Also, you want to have a valid testing script. What are you going to be testing? How are you going to be testing? All this information that you currently need in order to validate and say, hey, listen, the quality that I'm getting from this product actually exceeds my expectations, or it doesn't comply with what I'm looking for. This is just a quick run around. I want to give you guys, I don't know if the audience has any questions. Donnie, you want to shoot?
Okay. Well, one thing I wanted to clarify. So, you all did this initially for the disaster recovery features and everything. Talk to us a little bit about, compare what you would have to do in a TDM world versus disaster recovery in an IP world.
Sure. Now, dispatch is, I want the audience to picture, because maybe they don't understand what I'm talking about when I'm saying dispatch. But dispatch console world is like a big refrigerator. and it all the consoles that are currently currently operating in our dispatch center are wired up to this TDM solution. So when I was referring to mobility, is in the event that you would require to move to a different location with an IP solution, all you need to do now is just plug into an Ethernet node, and that's it. Voila, you're done. So that is really what we were looking for and what we were aiming with this transition, and hopefully we nailed it. But that's the drawback from a TDM perspective to an IP solution.
So with a TDM, you would have had to actually pick up everything, whereas in an IP solution, like you said, you just plug in a different Ethernet thing and go right back out about your business, right?
Exactly true. And I mean, don't get me wrong, if I had the money, or if it was up to me, I do prefer TDM over IP. Not in all don't get me wrong, not in all ways. IP has a lot more advantages as of right now. But as far as maintenance and support, we had that bad boy working for the past 10 years, and I can count probably with my fingers the times that we had issues with a console or something with that robust system. So it's very, very reliable, however, but it becomes obsolete. Things with time and with new technology coming over, it has to have more interaction with different parties, different I would say different brands, right?
Right. Well, we'll get more into that as we get further on in the discussion. Thank you very much, Donovan. And I know that what you're talking about from a disaster recovery is something that's being experienced throughout all sorts of sectors. I know in particular the 911 sector, that ability to be more flexible and relocate 911 call centers and dispatch centers through IP is one of the main driving forces that the FCC, I know, is looking at. So
I totally agree.
Much, Donovan.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, so Dave, talk to us a little bit about what you guys were doing at Southwest in terms of making the transition to IP, and what attracted you to IP, and your experiences so far.
Sure. So here at Southwest Airlines, we're approximately 600 aircraft, about 4,000 flights a day, all run out of a central operations center we call the network operations control. And so we've got a couple of things. One, 2 years ago, we acquired AirTran Airways, who was an early implementer of the Scout system. Two, we're very much an airline in transition. We have 100 remote locations, stations, cities we serve, and so we have a very robust and far-flung network infrastructure already built. And so the decision was made a couple of years ago as we continue to expand, particularly starting into the international areas, Mexico and the Caribbean, that we ought to better utilize our network resources that we already have in place rather than continue on the plain old telephone lines. So the decision was made to move the company to IP for all of our voice communications. And so as we started a project 2 years ago, about the same time the AirTran acquisition, we started a project to build an entirely new operations center, and we made the decision back then to build that with IP in mind, voice over IP in mind. And interesting enough, we're a long-time user of the Avtec dispatch product, about 15 years now, and like Donovan, it's a solid product. Knock on wood, we've never had an outage because of our comm system, because of the Avtec product. So a little nervous moving to the Scout system, but interesting enough, when we acquired AirTran, they had the Scout system, and it had been in use for about 18 months down there when we first acquired them. They continue to use it today when we moved their operations center up here to Dallas to join us in our center. We brought their Scout system with us for a couple of reasons, primarily to continue to get experience with it. And what we're finding is again, it's a very robust system. It's very easy for the end users, although there is a little bit more maintenance and support because of it's more software than hardware, unlike the old TDM system. So we've been very impressed with it. I will echo Donovan's comment about the network. When AirTran was still in Orlando, I used to see a few tickets being opened for their communication systems, and in investigating that, found that any and all the problems they had with the Scout system was a result of their network. Frankly, AirTran didn't have a very strong, robust, redundant network that unlike Southwest, and so we're very comfortable moving over there. We have, other than on the AirTran side, we're not currently a user of the Scout. We're in the process of installing it now in our new operations center, which should go live in May. We're pretty excited about it. We like what we've seen so far.
Okay, all right. Talk to me a little bit about the network. Both you and Donovan mentioned that. Donovan used the word mature network. From Southwest perspective, I guess, what does it mean to have a quality, robust, redundant network? What kind of are you using commercial providers? Are you using dedicated lines? How are you making this so that you can count on that connectivity?
So here at Southwest, we have dedicated lines to each of our stations, and then internally we're a heavy Cisco user, and so what we've got is multiple pathways, redundant switches. Really tried our best to eliminate any single points of failure. On the AirTran side, one of the things they suffered from is they used a third-party provider for all of their network, and so most of the problems they had were with those providers themselves. On the other hand, we try to, particularly to our larger stations, have multiple pathways through different providers, whether it be Sprint, AT&T, Verizon, connections to our stations with redundant network connections through them as well. Okay, all right. I want to emphasize, thank you very much, Dave. That's a great introduction into what you all are doing. I want to emphasize to our audience, please feel free to submit questions to us, and we will get to them as quickly as possible. We have one question from the audience already. Can you comment on the difference between transitioning from TDM to voice over IP versus simply replacing TDM with voice over IP? So I know for Southwest, it has created a couple of issues for us. So we're doing this one area at a time, and so even within our headquarters buildings, some of us are on the Cisco call manager, and some of them are still on the Avaya iron switch. Same thing with our stations. Each station, one at a time, is being moved over. What we found is while it does allow us to deploy our resources better and be very focused on each and every station as we transition it, we have found as we've unloaded the Avaya system, which has been in place for like 20 years now, that we did start experiencing some software and configuration problems with it. Nothing serious. It was fairly easily rectified. It was more of an annoyance and kind of an aha moment for us that rock that had been our switch for so many years and been problem-free had suddenly, when we started making changes to it and disrupting it, so to speak, we started having some minor issues. Other than that, it's been extremely smooth. Okay, all right. How about your experience, Donovan?
Well, and I was just listening to Dave, what he mentioned, and I was kind of like grinning because definitely I agree with what he mentioned. From a technical perspective, I would say this: a lot of people still use TDM out there. I've seen it, implemented in a variety of ways, but nowadays, that the standard norm becomes IP, right? So transitioning always from one technology to another, I believe that the challenges are not really, with the technical side, but more of the cultural side, the people that work the day-to-day operations. That was more the challenge with us in particular. People are, used to troubleshooting TDMs, processes, manuals, but the really challenge was environmental. Having somebody say, all right, now how am I going to attack a certain situation that I have encountered, since it's not this way anymore, it's that way. So, it is a learning curve. It is a learning curve. I see the transition from TDM to IP, a learning curve as far as more cultural than technical side. But, yeah, it is definitely not as tough as it might seem.
Okay, all right. One of the things both of you all, as critical infrastructure enterprises, you don't have the luxury, like maybe a small or medium-sized business, of saying, "Hey, everyone, take Friday off, and we're going to work. We're going to take Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, work through the weekend, and we're going to change over our network." You guys have to do this stuff on the fly while things are going. Trains still have to run. Airplanes still have to fly. There's no, we're not going to fly for 3 days so that we can change our network. How did you manage that transition? The logistics of it.
Well, again, so you're correct. I think both of us have a 24-hour business here, and we do have to keep operating. And the fastest way to ground an airplane is to lose your communications with it. So we're very cognizant of that. Our tech folks, again, by doing this in a phased manner, one station at a time, where it's important for them to be able to focus that way on one thing at a time. And typically the way we'll do it is, we have slow periods. The middle of the night is fairly slow for us, so we'll pick a date and time and just make the switch. It is literally they'll have two telephones sitting at the ops console at a station, and 1 minute they're using the TDM, the next one they're using the IP, and that's worked very well. And we leave the old infrastructure in place for a period of time in order to fall back if we experience any problems.
Okay. How about you, Donovan?
Right. Logistically speaking, Donnie, it was a pain in the butt, truthfully. Particularly for our core of the business. Moving trains is a core, so dispatch is the core of the business here for us. Moving trains, if you don't move a train, costs money, we lose money, right? So this logistically here, prior to the cut, we set up a whole lab environment. I would say running in parallel, leaving the dispatch system functioning properly while we were testing, and at the same time launching in production. So yeah, it was a lot of throwing a lot of communication plans out there, coordinating, negotiating with different areas involved, technical areas involved as well, from networking, from also from people that were SMEs in SMEs in microwave. So it was really a big challenge. But like I said before, like I mentioned before, once you draw up your baseline and what you want, how you want to achieve it, the rest, it's just work.
Okay, all right. I have a question from the audience. And Donovan, you mentioned this, and I'd like to get your thoughts as well, Dave. What was the transition to IP? What kind of training did you have to go through? And I'd like for you to address it from two sides, both from the dispatcher, what did they have to learn new? And then, probably more importantly, what did those back-end guys have to learn, and how tough was it to bring them up to speed to IP?
Sure. Dave, I'll go first real quick. From the user side, for us, it was very transparent, because basically what the user had was what he got at the end. Meaning that, for him, he didn't even realize that he was going through IP instead of TDM. All he wanted was the same image, the same features in the buttons, basically the same screen that he had is what we put in place. And the reason we did that was for the dispatchers not to feel that we were invading them or say giving them a new tool without prior training and so to speak. So from the user perspective, it was basically the same thing. They didn't know what was going on. And from the technical teams, it wasn't challenging because we're divided by different teams. We have microwave guys, we have radio guys, we have a networking team. So since it was a very robust system, there was really a learning curve to that IP world was significantly small, since everybody knows. Well, at least I would like to think that in most companies, most of the guys on the technical side understand when they say, "Hey, what's your IP address?" So, truthfully speaking, if I could say from 1 to 10, I would say I was scored like a 4. I mean, learning curve was very, very, very low.
Okay, all right. Dave, what about you? What did you all experience?
So very much the same thing. Since we're moving from one Avtec solution to another, we are creating our screens to look very similar to what they see today for the first iteration, remembering that their first experience for the Southwest dispatchers on Scout will be the same day they're moving into a new facility. So to minimize the change shock, we building screens that look very much like they do before. However, I will say, if you're not currently an Avtec user, and this will be your first touchscreen application per se for voice communications, you can build these screens to be pretty much anything you'd like, and you can make them everything from very, very simple to very, very busy screens. We try not to mix anything in our Scout applications other than communications, so we're not mixing video or anything like that in there. Again, the communication system's required to fly, so we treat it, we kind of try to isolate it as much as we can. Training for the support folks, IT folks, Avtec has an extremely good training course that you'll spend 4 or 5 days down in their facility, and they do an outstanding job of teaching you not only the system architecture and how it's properly deployed, but also how to properly build the screens and some of the things to do and not to do when you're building screens. We're very much looking forward to it. One of the things that Scout gives us that with the newer technologies is ability to build screens that are very custom to a job function, and so our goal is, for example, to build a screen where the user can stay on a single screen for on a normal day all the time, but still have all the higher end functions and features behind it if they choose to kind of tab back to. Again, the training for our IT folks, they had already received training on the Cisco call manager, so the IP side of it was not a hurdle for them. Within Southwest, our technology folks will handle that the call manager portion of it, but our dispatch support team will actually build the screens and handle the day-to-day software support.
Okay, all right. I have another question from the audience. Have you found IP to be more cost-effective than TDM systems? And in particular, I'm kind of curious, were you all able to get rid of some of your lease lines by moving to IP?
Well, okay. From the Southwest side, I really can't speak for how much the savings were over the other, but yeah, we were able, like I said, since we already had the infrastructure, the network in place to each one of our internal locations, we were able to, as we convert those stations, do away with the dedicated comm lines out there, and just go to our network lines. So I would say yes, there's substantial savings in going this way, but I couldn't tell you exactly what it is.
Sure. Donovan, what's your experience?
I'm going to echo a little bit what Dave mentioned. I do see, from my own perspective, I do see a cost benefit going through IP from part TDM, and just as you mentioned, maybe replacing some of the lease lines. But most of it is that value, that earned value that we achieved moving to Scout. Having that ability to move and plug in wherever you want. I mean, maybe it's not as tangible and you don't see the money, but you do see the value that you get after you implement, excuse me, this type of feature. So definitely was I could see the benefit from moving them to an IP network.
Okay, all right. Also want to reiterate to the audience, please send us your questions. And we'll be happy to ask them of our panelists here as we move forward. We've talked a little bit about some of the things that you guys have realized here in the near term, the benefits and savings and that sort of thing. But how about for a long term? Do you feel more comfortable the fact that you've already moved to IP, that frankly you've kind of future-proofed your system? Regardless what may come down the road, whether it's, I know you're just using mostly voice today, but maybe video, text, or something else is part of your future. Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd say absolutely. Video text would definitely be part of our future as we get larger and more complex and with more passenger interconnectivity. We're finding that we need to coordinate more and more with our larger stations. Southwest is not a true hub and spoke airline, but think of it as we've got 10 mini hubs out there that we do a lot of connectivity through, and so coordinating with those folks in Chicago and Baltimore and Denver and Los Angeles and Phoenix and places like that, having a video feed alongside of the voice communications would be a huge advantage for us, and something we're thinking of for the future.
And was that a driver in terms of actually making the decision, or was it something you realized after the fact?
I think we realized it more after the fact when we started looking at. Like I said, the corporation had already made the decision to go with voice over IP for the rest of the company. From the operations side, as we started looking into it, we started seeing a lot of advantages in that kind of flexibility that we don't have with the old system. Okay.
Donovan, how about you? Do you feel better about the future having already made this transition to IP?
Same here, definitely. I would say that we were one of the, I don't want to say like testing piggies, right, from Avtec, but we were one of the companies that had deployed Scout on their very, very early version of their firmware. So we're definitely content with now moving on to an IP, and since we see a lot of good ways that we can help leverage, what we currently have, like setting up SNMP traps to monitor our VP gates, and having our monitoring tool being able to alert us when a console goes down or something's occurring. So it definitely gives you that vision of what a TDM system couldn't do. I mean, just as we mentioned, it was very reliable, but you don't have that advantage that if you want to monitor something, now you can do with all these SNMP traps. So we're definitely taking advantage of all the new technology that IP has to offer, having switched to the IP interconnection.
And I'll ask you the same question I asked Dave. Was that something that you all had planned to do from the very beginning, or was it something you kind of came across more as you were making the transition and after the system was installed?
We envisioned it, but we were probably not hesitant, but we relied really on dispatch. We were comfortable with it, but the environment changed, so we had to adapt to new technologies. That's the bottom line.
Okay, all right. And you mentioned the environment changing. For both of you, how hard was it, frankly, to find employees that were familiar with TDM in terms of new talent? And how much, I would think it would be easier to find new talent coming out of schools and things like that right now that are more familiar, frankly, with IP as opposed to TDM. Is that true?
Right, it's true. Dave, what do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a lot easier finding the young folks coming out of college that are well versed in IP, and it's not been an issue for us at all.
I agree.
Okay.
I mean, fortunately for us, for Kansas City Southern Railways, we have a very, very knowledgeable SMEs. I want to say his name is Mr. Roberto Barranco. This is one of the technical SMEs that I believe that without him, the project would have been very, very hectic or a chaos. I mean, with his help. So, given that is mentioning that TDM system is also tough. It's not as maybe not as fluent a language as IP now, but if you don't have the right guy there to do the what's critical, then you're going to have problems. So targeting those people and identifying prior to a migration like this, that's definitely a key factor that you must consider.
Okay.
Like they say, a critical success factor.
Very, very true. We've got some more questions from the audience. Here's a technical one. Did you keep the Scout system on its own IP subnets separate from normal enterprise PCs for the organization?
Yes, we did. On our end, yes, we did. We created our own set of VLAN, its own subnet mask for it. At first, when we first deployed it, what we did is we didn't want to connect the VP gates directly to a switch that was shared with other services. We wanted to verify. We wanted to really nail down and say that the cutover was transparent. So we connected the VP gates directly to its own switch. So it was a local LAN, so to say. It wasn't virtual. It was local. However, test results were very excellent. What we're looking for. Then we swapped back the VP gates to a regular shared switch. So yes, definitely, we do share different applications across the network with the Scout system.
Okay. How about you guys, Dave?
So yes, we put our system on its own subnet for part of the way anyway. We are putting our gateways onto the shared. Along with the Cisco gate managers on the shared switch for that over at our data center. But between the op center and the data center, it's its own subnet.
Okay, all right. And we have another question from the audience. Have you found system support much easier with IP than TDM? In other words, you don't have to get into a truck and drive across the state every time?
For our end, yes, but it's also a pain in the butt, and I know all those tech guys and IP world guys are going to know this. It is a little bit more challenging to troubleshoot because now you got to have a little bit of sniffer on the web and try to analyze what's going on now. But it is a lot more easier because it makes it more comfortable for whoever is going to be in charge of supporting the application, so to speak. But yeah, definitely, I agree.
Okay, Dave, how about you?
Yeah, our experience so far that I'm aware of, and again, I'm not as tuned into as our tech support folks are on some of this, and we're not a heavy Scout user yet. So, my experience and my observation so far is we've got some very good technical people on the network side. It is. Or TDM, I could reach out to one group of technicians to solve all my problems. With the IP solution, it feels like I'm having to deal with 2 or 3 different groups. A network group, the telecom group, and then the my own internal support folks to discover where the problem may be. Okay. I think that's probably my biggest fear going into this.
All right. Have another question from the audience. What difficulties, if any, are there with interfacing existing analog equipment or with interfacing with legacy two-way voting systems? Was delay or timing issues difficult to overcome? Did you guys experience any of that stuff?
I'm trying to recall because I do remember that term voting back when we were back installing, but for us it wasn't a big. It didn't become an issue. I believe we did receive delays at some point, but however, with the firmware upgrade, this was resolved. We knew that we were with a new version, with the newest version of Scout. So we were told since day one that some of the features might be, I don't know, I don't want to say 100% functional, but you might see something, right? So once we got rid of it with their new firmware, I don't want to get too into that, but
okay. How about you, Dave?
So yeah, I'm not aware of any problems that we had with any of that. The Avtec Outpost allowing us to connect our Scout system to our analog radio systems out there is very easy, transparent. But I'm not aware of any timing issues or voting issues or anything like that.
Okay, all right. I want to remind the audience, please send us your questions. We're coming in the last 20 minutes or so of our discussion here. One from the audience: do you request specific comms infrastructure from service providers, or is it a generic IP service?
Well, this is Dave. I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. When we need an IP, I pick up the phone. I call my technology folks, right? So I'm not sure exactly how they have that engineered.
Okay. I was trying to understand the question, Donnie, but I don't quite see. I'm trying to think out loud if it's probably he was referring to if we have a static, and again, I'm not sure I understood the question right. If we have a static environment where we have to request the service provider for, I don't know, some public IPs in order to access. But if I understand the question as I just said, no, definitely not. You can set it up as whatever you want. Class C IP world.
All right. Another question from the audience: has quality of service been an issue in the enterprise WAN, or was this previously created for voice over IP?
Dave, I'll go ahead first if you want.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Sure. This quality of service issue was attacked since day one. When you have a voice over IP, I know Dave's probably going to back me up on this. When you have IP telephony already in your corporate headquarters, quality of service is the first thing that you have to look out for. However, you do have to see how it interacts between if you install the feature on your console, that the ability for your dispatcher to make a phone call through. I would say this: you definitely have to look out on the codecs that you use. We're normally set up for GE711, so I hope that helps. I got to answer the question.
Donovan was much more technical than I can be. I haven't seen any quality of service issues with our network on the AirTran side. I'm not expecting on the Southwest side. We, in fact, Avtec's in tomorrow to start hooking us up to our network, so we haven't even started testing our system yet. But again, on the AirTran side, that's 40 consoles where we've not seen a quality of service issue at all. Okay,
all right. I'm going to bring up a question. Anytime people bring up the whole notion of moving to IP, one of the things that always comes up is security. How do you make sure you got these legions of millions and millions of hackers out there with nothing to do, it seems like, other than to create chaos? Was that a concern of you guys as you made this migration, and what are you all doing to make it so you can sleep at night?
Dave, you want to shoot that one? All right.
Well, go ahead.
Definitely, Donnie. I believe now all companies are, since all these cyber attacks going on, if you look at the trends and stuff like that, everybody's talking about, and it's getting a little bit paranoid. Truthfully, I've never witnessed here in our company, I guess, that we have a real good security team. I've never witnessed any attack. However, we do have implemented a team, an info security team, which is very capable and knowledgeable, and just upgraded a whole bunch of firewalls. So, but yeah, you have to take this in consideration, because at the end, what you want to do is, you want to, everything that you build, you want to keep out intruders. So this is something that you want to, when you're thinking about moving to an IP world, you have to take all these things into account: security-wise, scalability, maintenance and support, training. There's all sorts of things that you do have to come together and make one big project. So yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and again echo what Donovan said. We have a very strong IT security group. We derive most of the vast majority of our revenue through our websites, and so yeah, we experience a lot of attacks. Very few have caused us any real problems. So you have to have that strong infrastructure in place with good solid firewalls and all the other protections that your IT security folks can put in place. Again, being on a separate subnet internally helps us a little bit there. But eventually you've got to hit your main firewalls, and again, you really need to spend the money and have a good, robust protection in place.
Okay, all right. I'll have another question from the audience. It sounds like the commonality with the legacy TDM screens was critical. Did you consider other solutions that could emulate the legacy screens via the GUI?
I'm going to say from Southwest side, no, we did not consider that. We acquired a significant Scout presence when we acquired AirTran Airways, so we didn't do much shopping at all. We were already a solid Avtec customer, and with the number of Scout units that we acquired with AirTran, it was kind of a no-brainer for us to just continue on down the road with Scout. So no, we didn't do any other shopping or evaluation.
And how about you, Donovan?
Yeah, same. I don't. Excuse me. I woke up today with this nasty cough. I apologize for that. But the question was that we definitely took it in consideration. The mobility, that was like one of our main business case justifications. So I'm sticking with that.
Okay. All right. Another question from the audience. Can you give us a feeling for how much bandwidth per channel the Avtec system uses? And also asked a question and reiterated, you all both have QoS on your systems, right?
Yeah. I'll take the lead for that, Dave, if you want. I'm reading here the question. It says, as far as, okay, very general, if we're talking from BP gate to outpost on a location, I'm thinking about a bandwidth that's more or less around 25K with quality of service, probably set up a codec of G729 there. That's the way we currently have it set up. That's the way we would recommend any other user. Depending on their topology network, on their network topology. But that's one of Avtec's recommendations. So I would probably say between 25K per channel and quality of codec, using a codec of G729.
Okay. Dave, what is your experience?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not that technical.
Okay.
I really can't answer the question, to be honest with you.
All right. Have another question from the audience. How was the financial decision made to transition to IP? Were there metrics like total cost of ownership or return on investment that were considered?
Oh, you bet. You bet, definitely. When you want to put, particularly here, when you have a new idea come up and then you want to transition it and say, look, listen, this is the ROI that we're going to have, was going to be set in place. You have to accommodate a lot of people, and a lot of people are going to be asking you, well, if you change this, basically you have to verify if you don't hit any of your constraints. So it is something that you definitely have to look out for and watch out. Get that steering committee's approval. You have to prepare a good ROI and justification. You have to come up with a good business case. That's my particular experience.
How about you, Dave?
Right. Well, same here. We did a business case with proven out a 15% ROI within 5 years. So there was some cost savings, but this is also an infrastructure project for us. So we were in a position where we were going to either have to invest more money in the older TDM system or make the switch to IP at this point. And so it became a kind of a combination of a business case savings on telephone lines and the cost of the old iron switch, and then again, infrastructure for the future, getting ready to move out of the continental United States. What's that look like? We have to establish networks at all our location anyway, and so it really became a fairly fairly easy decision for our leaders to make.
Okay, all right. I have a couple of questions from the audience that are similar here, but what were some of the features that were lost or gained switching from TDM to IP?
Well, gaining, you've got some, again, a lot of new. It's all software driven, so you have a lot of new functionality within the Avtec system itself. A lot more flexibility when it comes to what sort of dial-up radio and native IP devices you can put on the system. And again, it's a newer system, so Avtec has put some new functionality, telephone type functionality on there as well. The flexibility in designing the screens is greatly enhanced. That's pretty much it.
Donovan, how about for you guys?
I agree, and I guess the drawback from going for that old dispatch was that you lose a nice asset, right? It could go actually to a museum so people can check it out. That's what normally I told the guys here in finance when they were trying to probably figure out what they were going to do with it. But moving to that IP again, it's the flexibility that it offers. It really enhances you to really endeavor into it and have different third parties, and by third parties I mean different types of protocols and whatnot. I'm not really a tech guy, but from what I've seen, my perspective is switching to IP definitely becomes a lot more flexible. So that's the key there. That that you have more availability of resources to really leverage that system up.
Okay. All right. And another one. How reliable is the new voice over IP system? How much downtime have you experienced since moving?
I'd say from the Southwest side, I don't know of any outages and any downtime that we've experienced in our phone systems, comm systems. Again, the AirTran dispatch dispatchers are on the Scout system, and again, since we've moved them up here and put them on our network, other than an individual console that had to be rebooted, we haven't seen any issues at all. It's been extremely reliable.
True. I second that.
Okay, so basically, just like when you're building a building, have a good foundation, and then you can put it whatever you want on top of it, right?
Exactly right.
Right.
Okay, and have another question from the audience, and this is one I think was on everyone's mind. What was your biggest worry when making the transition from TDM to IP? And has it come to fruition?
that was just exactly right in my mind what I was going to say. One of the biggest threats that we had, or I don't want to say threats, but worries, was how a system would behave since it's software. Software things, and it's those old saying in Spanish that says "no tienen palabra," meaning that they don't have promise. They can't keep a promise, right? Software normally tends, especially when you're using a software app based, something goes wrong, a bug or whatever, and that's it, you're fried. Hardware, basically, you just grab in, plug and play. So that was one of the things that we thought about. That worried us, coming from a hardware physical thing that if something was wrong, you could swap a card and say, all right, I fixed it, I wired it up. And going into an environment where it was completely virtual, for so to say. That was one of our main worries, but eventually, everything was stable enough for us to endure that transition.
Okay, Dave,
what about you, Dave?
Yeah, so I think reliability was my biggest fear, the thing that kept me up at night. I've been told for years by our tech folks that IP stood for instant problem, and so. I was a little nervous at first as the company started moving on to it, and then got more comfortable with it. The experience that we've seen with the AirTran system, and again, as more and more businesses move to voice over IP, I think it's becoming a much more mature, reliable product than it was, say, 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay, all right. Another question from the audience. Were there any user authentication services applied that were challenging with devices, etc.?
Not in our particular case. I believe the system itself does interact with AD, Active Directory, to do user authentication. We didn't go that path. However, we didn't encounter anything at all.
Yeah, I think Southwest, we're in the same boat. We're not using authentication in any of our applications so far that I'm aware of.
Okay, all right. And another one from the audience. What SIP phone functions did you see when connecting to the Cisco Call Manager?
Can you repeat that question, Donnie, for me? Appreciate it.
What SIP phone functions did you see when connecting to Cisco UCM?
I believe you can see all of them as far as, you set it up just as a regular, normal physical extension with all its, features as far as conference, forward call. It's really transparent. You see the console is basically a soft console, what they call now. Instead of having your physical phone, you have that same pad within the console screen. I don't know if Dave has the setup that way, but we do. And as far as functionality, is basically the same functions that that physical phone gives you, supports the soft phone supports as well. Okay. There was no really any loss.
Yeah, and I'm not aware of any loss of functions, but I couldn't tell you myself exactly what functions are available out there. I know our experience is we didn't lose any functionality.
Okay. Got another the final question from the audience. Actually, we have another one. With the migration to IP, do you see a big increase in RFID devices? I don't know if that really impacts either one of you guys.
Yeah, I think it really doesn't impact us, but I get just an overall. From my own perspective, RFID devices are, it's especially in the train section, it's like a big boom because you need readers all across. Well, at least we do. So this is a big, broader question, but my particular answer is yes, I do see an increase.
Yeah, and so for us, no. We're not using RFID right now.
Okay, all right. And our final question of the day, what advice would you give those who are thinking about making the transition from TDM to IP?
Drink a beer or two prior to making the decision. No, definitely, being serious now. My 2 cents I want to chip into the audience is have a solid plan prior to the cut. Identify all the stakeholders that are going to be involved in your project from day one. That's your main success factor. Identify all the people, all the individuals that are going to be part of this project. Otherwise, you're going to run into certain. And we discussed this earlier, that how Donnie, you brought it up, is how critical it was to have somebody that knew TDM and somebody that knew IP. That's fundamental in order to make a transition smooth. You have to have the right people at the right time.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll echo
How about you,
that.
Dave?
I think, definitely having the right people, having them well trained, have a well thought out plan, but to me, most importantly, have a strong, robust network. That foundation is all critical. I think you'll be disappointed in results if you don't have a good network to build on.
Totally agree. I second that.
Very, very good. Well, we are out of time right now, but we'd like to thank our presenters, Dave Wotton and Donovan Medina, for their very informative presentation this afternoon. Great job, guys. We'd also like to thank our sponsor, Avtec, for making this event possible today. Their support is very much appreciated. Let me thank you, our audience, for your time and attendance this afternoon and for the great questions. We hope you found today's event valuable and informative. Again, thank you, Dave and Donovan. Really appreciate you taking the time to be on this webinar with us.
Thank you, Donnie, and thank you, Dave, for sharing your experiences with us as well.
Thank you.
Well, have a productive remainder of your day, and we'll see you at the next IWCE's Urgent Communications webinar.
See you there. Thanks, guys.